Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick video to update you on something that's just been released today. This is actually a quadcopter from Orca. Orca? Yeah, remember those guys? Those are the guys that make these kind of goggles. And lots of people have them, lots of people really love them. Now, it's one of those manufacturers I never really got involved with, so I never got to play with those goggles and mess around with them. But everyone I knew that had them had nothing but great things to say about them. However, over the last couple of years, they've been branching out into other things like controllers and flight controllers, motors, basically all the parts that you need to build a quad. So now they've done it. This is the orqa-dreamx, which has just been released today. Now, I'm not calling this a full review, this is just a radio control news thing, because I haven't had this long enough to fly it. I've been in Florida for a couple of weeks with family during the summer, and I've had terrible weather since I've got back. So I don't want to do a full review of this until I've actually put enough flight hours through it. But I thought it was interesting enough for me to show you why this is a little bit different, because it feels like Orca is trying to develop an ecosystem with their goggles, with their remote controls, with the quads, but also because they have a relationship with Immersion RC, specifically around things like the Ghost modules that actually are the radio control link that this thing's using. So first of all, let's have a look at the quad itself. Now this has a 5-inch carbon fiber chassis, arms are 6mm. We'll go through all the specs in a minute. It has multiple mounting options for flight electronics. This one has an ESC and flight controller in the middle, but there's also space at the front for things and also space at the back. This is the analog version that I have here. So this is an analog system. Surprise, surprise, using the Immersion RC tramp protocol to configure everything, and because it's using Ghost, it also means that we can do cool things like set things up from your phone. But more about that in a moment. The flight controller itself is a 20 by 20mm F722 flight controller, and under that are a set of 4-in-1 60 amp ESCs. Connected to that is the Immersion RC Ghost Hybrid Ultimate, and it's also got the Orca toothless FPV camera up at the front. So this is all their branded technology. Orca Lollipop version 4 at the back, 5.8 GHz antenna, and the frame's designed really for spinning 5-inch props. It has a dry weight of about 115 grams. These are actually Gemfan floppy proppies. This is how it comes. You'll notice that there is this single red prop at the front. That apparently is going to be a brand thing, or the quads that they make are going to have this single red prop to differentiate them from everybody else. Bottom plate on this is 3mm thick, mid plate is 2mm thick, so is the top plate, and the arms again are 6mm thick, and they have a plate at the bottom that's designed for rigidity, but also to absorb some of the harmonics that you can get when you're using things like folding props. Designed around 6S, so I've been flying it with this pack here, designed around 1000 to 1500 milliamp hour 6S pack, and the retail version of this is going to come with spare props in the box. There's a note for this review unit that the box that we're looking at the moment is the one that is going to be updated and tweaked a little bit for the retail version that's been released today. The motors on the arms are the Orca RTR motors. These are 1900 kV units, so these are 2207 motors at 1900 kV. They're Unibel rotor design with N55SH curved magnets around the outside, NSK 684 bearings, titanium hollow shaft. The wire on them is 20 AWG. They weigh about 31.5 grams excluding the cable, and they have a 12N14P motor config around the outside. These are rated for 2 to 6S. They seem like really, really nice motors. Away from the quad, let's talk about the radio. Now, the radio is a bit of a funky thing. I've not played with these radios, and you'll notice that in the back, the thing that snaps in is actually the Immersion RC Ghost stuff. And it's the Immersion RC Ghost Uberlight 24 that snaps into the back position. Just has enough controls for a quad, so we have a standard Mode 2 configuration by default. Batteries charged via the USB-C port at the top. In terms of the switches, we have 2 momentary latching switches on the outside, and then 2 3-position switches are great for doing things like your modes and stuff. And then we have 2 buttons at the front, A and B, and they can be used also to do things like bind this to your phone using the app. Power is at the bottom here, and the battery is internal. Sadly not removable, but there is access to things like the tension springs and other stuff via the ports at the back, so you don't have to take it apart if you want to tweak the way the gimbals feel, which is good. From the flying that I've done with it here, it's working really well with the quad. Again, I don't want to comment else I've got a lot more flight time out of it. In terms of binding it, it's really easy. You just turn it over, press the button on the back, power the quad, and it automatically binds. But it's the app on the phone that I really love, because even though this looks like a basic controller, it's actually very clever. Does it have the level of sophistication of something powered by HTX? Absolutely not. But if you want something that just all works together, that has the minimum amount of hassle and messing around, this is going to be right up your street. Very much like a gamepad when you have it in your hands, like a very large PlayStation 5 or Xbox controller, and the gimbals are a decent size. Although they look a bit smaller, the actual movement is pretty good, and they're good for both thumbers and pinchers. I would have preferred them to be a little bit closer to the edge for pinchers, but thumbers actually fits really nicely. There is an optional Bluetooth module that plugs into the back that provides an easy connection for the SIM. Orca also have their own SIM, so it really is a ecosystem these guys are trying to build out here. And as I mentioned, the binding is super easy. You can also set up multiple different models using the app, as well as do things like your calibration. Plugging the quad into Betaflight, let me give you a very quick tour of how it is supplied, because there's a couple of things that are in here that you would expect and a couple of things that you wouldn't, because we're using the IRC tramp stuff and the Ghost. There is something in the data flash, so this has been pre-flown. I don't know if that's just because this is a review unit or that's going to be for everyone, but I do like to see that before it comes out. Loads of ports on the flight controller. Interestingly, the bottom 2 are set for ESC and GPS. There's no GPS on this, but if you get your telemetry back when this is set up for telemetry, you could actually use the Find My Drone in the app to get your stuff back. 8K and 4K loops. This is an F722, so it's just ticking along at about 27%, which is great. Everything else looks completely standard and normal. Power and battery look like this. Failsafe is set to drop, although I could be tempted to add a GPS to this to have the return to home. PID tuning, again, I'll put a dump and diff below so you can go and check that out if you're interested. But this is nice. I do like the fact that there's a little bit of expo in here added to make it nice and gentle. And then the other things, receiver in here, it's set for IRC Ghost. Telemetry is turned on. Again, the binding is super simple. Just power on the radio, press the LED on the Ghost module, power your receiver via the battery, and you're good. The modes are a little bit wacky. They're fine for how they're set up by default, but if you know Betaflight, you're going to want to come in here and play around with stuff, because you really only have horizon and rate mode. There's nothing else set. Motors are reversed, so be aware of that if you are wanting to swap out those foldable props for fixed ones. On-screen display is going to need a little bit of a play. We all have our own particular way that we like it round, so I would come in here and tweak that too. And the video transmitter isn't set up, but that is all configurable through the app on the phone, which is why it doesn't appear. So this is a really interesting move from Orca to bring out the last remaining piece that was missing from their own kind of ecosystem. They've had the goggles for ages, they've had radios of different types, they've now got flight controllers, ESCs, motors, cameras, and with their partnership with people like Immersion RC, they've got the RC Link, they've got the Tramp and everything else, and it seems obvious when you think about it that this was where they were always headed. But the thing that I'm surprised at is that they are backing the Immersion RC stuff so heavily as part of this. If you want a system that is so easy to put together that comes ready to fly out the box, you don't want to spend hours learning Betaflight or watching YouTube videos, then this sounds like what they're trying to be. They're trying to be something in between like a Team Black Sheep and a DJI for those who like to fly more open source style quads. And it is interesting that they haven't given an option for those who are invested in the Express LRS side of things, because if they were targeting other parts of the hobby, then surely that would have been an obvious option. I do like the frame, I like the folding props. We'll see in more detail once I've put more flight hours through it how they fly. So far so good. And there are lots of 3D printed pieces on the model. I wonder if they'll share files for them so pilots can print replacements if things get broken. Reading through some of the notes that came along with this review unit, it does sound like these guys have been working on a frame for a long time, probably the best part of about 7 odd years at this point, and this isn't their first one. And there's lots of focus here on resilience, and it's really designed to absorb the resonance to provide clean Betaflight logs. That's something they've worked on. The set arms are separate so they can come off, which means their repairs are super simple. And again, there are 3 places in here for the PCB mounts, a 20 by 20 location in the front, there's a 25 by 25 in the rear. I would have liked a 20mm too for walk snail, and there's also a 20 by 20 or 30 by 30 in the middle, which is what this current flight stack is connected to. And there are HD versions of this around, and they are showing that you can fit a HD system in the back, and I like the way that they've kind of done it where you turned it by 45 degrees to get everything to fit at the back, although apparently the O3A unit is a little bit tight. And I also like the cute touches like the rubber band that actually holds the antenna in place. Those of you know I'm a big fan of vertical antennas on things like quads, and definitely in things like wings and planes, so the fact that it isn't connected and gives you flexibility to pop it where you want it to be is actually something I might pinch and use in my coming builds in the next 6-8 months. In terms of things to be aware of, well, there isn't. I think this is really exciting that Orca, who are so much about the hobby, have decided to enter the quad part as well. And they're doing it in a way that's a little bit different from everyone else, thanks to that partnership with Immersion RC. I think that potentially not offering one with an Express LRS receiver or one that has no receiver that you can add your own to potentially could limit the market, but I genuinely think that they don't care about that. What they're looking for are pilots who just want to have the experience and fly a quad without having to spend a day and a half watching YouTube videos and reading forum posts. And when it comes to that, from the experience that I've had here, it works really well. The app on the phone is nice and easy to use, the binding process is super simple, and the initial impressions of the quad and how it's flying is very good too. So I'll be keeping an eye on Orca in the future. They have impressed me with this initial version of a quad, and it's always fun to see somebody new coming in and trying to do something a little different. Thank you for watching my video. Check out the playlist, and adding Pedantry 60 to your search terms will help you find my content. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. You can support the time I spend here answering questions and helping others by using the links in the video description.